Okay, welcome back to Open. Since the height of the pandemic, Americans have been met with the rising costs of everyday necessities like food, gas, and now rent. The organization Street Easy has found that while rent in New York City has gone up, wages have gone down, leaving many New Yorkers struggling to afford rent. Joining me this evening, or this morning actually, to discuss this finding is the economist for Street Easy. It is Mr. Kenny Lee. Mr. Lee, nice to have you with us.
Great to be here.
There's two ends, and if you don't make them fit, then you have big problems. Let's start with the rent part of it. Why is rent going up? I mean, we had a candidate who said, the rent is too damn high. Everybody would agree with that. What is the deal with rent? And I realize there are many levels to it, but what's your overall perspective on that?
Yeah, since the pandemic, rental demand has come back very strongly in the city. Unfortunately, supply has not. I think there are two factors that are really pressuring the supply. First of all, a lot of priced out buyers in the city are still waiting in the rental market for their chance to become a homeowner. Also, our data suggests that New Yorkers are paying up to avoid having roommates. That means there are fewer options for renters out there to score their future home.
It's interesting because of all the different types of housing that there are. And people say, well, why doesn't my landlord just lower the rent? But let's be honest, the landlord's rents or the landlord's costs are going up for heat, for everything, for construction. You say you want to redo the plumbing. Well, where does that money come from, especially if they're not raising the rent? So a little sympathy somewhere in there. While we appreciate that tenants are unhappy and feeling the pinch, is there some sympathy for property owners as well who say, look, I'd like to do the right thing. Show me the money.
That is true. Inflation has hit New Yorkers very hard, and that includes landlords too. Utilities have been going up pretty strongly. Labor costs to maintain the property have also gone up pretty substantially. That means landlords have to unfortunately pass on the costs to the tenants as well. Also, expiring pandemic discounts have played a role. This summer, we identified that in Manhattan, about 44% of the rental inventory in the second quarter of this year were related to expiring pandemic deals.
Let's just go to the other end. As I said, the rent is here and the wages are here. Let's talk about the wage issue. New York has a $15 minimum wage. There's talk that by 2025, many of our elected officials want to get it up to $20. Somehow, I feel like we're not getting where we need to be because you see people coming off the subway and they're going right to the friendly fridge because even though they're working, they can't make enough to even feed their families. It's horrible. Where are we at as far as raising not only the minimum wage but other people's wages?
Of course, having higher minimum wage could help certain New Yorkers who don't make that much money compared to the rest of the city. But the problem is that the rents have been stubbornly high. In fact, in November, rents based on our Streezy data declined only $5. That's really just less than two subway swipes. And inflation has hit New Yorkers' wallet very hard. This summer, after adjusting for inflation, wages fell nearly 9% year over year. And that can be a substantial financial burden for many people in the city.
Uh, can you just talk a little bit about the numbers? Excluding the temporary gap in 2020 due to COVID and the pandemic, New Yorkers are experiencing the widest gap since 2008, 14 years. Well, now it's 2023, so it's 15 years. But the gap appears to be much larger than the one experienced back then. What accounts for the discrepancies?
Right. The situation back then, when the city was hit by the global financial crisis, was very different. Between 2008 and 2009, wages remained relatively flat after adjusting for inflation. Also, rents actually declined around that time. However, these days, rents are up nearly double digit. Also, income has fallen substantially after adjusting for inflation. That has led to really additional financial burden for New Yorkers. A lot of people out there are just experiencing this lack of available inventory out there that fits their budget.
Let's just talk about the fact that we just went into 2023. The pandemic was the year 2000, year 2020. We're now emerging out of it. I mean, fewer people need to be wearing masks. People are generally healthier. We don't have the pandemic like we used to. I mean, people are debating the word. Why haven't we rebounded? You know, in other words, people back to work. Why haven't things rebounded since then? Is there a human element involved? Is there a financial element involved? Why is it that we can't just kind of, okay, let's get back to where we were?
The city has made a very strong comeback since the pandemic, but the housing market really hasn't made that comeback yet. The problem is the imbalance between supply and demand. There's just not enough supply, not enough homes available for all the New Yorkers looking for their permanent home. And the problem is it will take some time for the housing market to find a new balance between supply and demand. This is not happening at a pace that many New Yorkers are hoping for.
Mr. Lee, let's right now we'll nominate you for president of the United States. And an economist for StreetEasy, tell us a little bit about how you would view all of this gap and all of the issues for inflation, and as well as what you talk about the high rents. What would you recommend that the current president do or anybody does to kind of put things back together so they make sense?
Yeah, that's a very tough task. I think the supply of affordable housing is very important for this current situation. The rental market is finding a new balance. We still see silver lining. The share of listings that are offering discounts are on the rise. Also, concessions are returning to the market, meaning that landlords are making uh, more adjustments to their contracts so that they can fill up their vacancies. As we move towards a normalcy, the renters in New York City should be able to find better deals in 2023. However, the process will be rather slow because of very low inventory out there.
In the article, they talk about people looking away from Manhattan, and we in the outer boroughs, in the borough of the Bronx, are experiencing people saying, "Well, wait a minute, maybe the Bronx is a good place." Of course, we would always recommend that it is a good place to go. How could this movement affect communities of people who are already living there and also possibly dealing with the same struggle? And you're saying, well, wait a minute, you're going to come here looking for an answer. We ain't got it solved here either.
Right. StreetEasy's search data shows that New Yorkers are really trying to be flexible to find something that fits their budget. Rising rents have squeezed New Yorkers very hard, and they are looking farther away from Manhattan to find a deal. That means rents and also home prices could rise further in these affected areas. And that means additional financial burdens who are facing rising rents in their local areas.
We've had an eviction issue here, and we've had an eviction moratorium. The eviction moratorium was lifted, and now we're finding many people are saying, "Well, wait a minute, I really could be in trouble here." Where do we put that in this gap equation?
Yeah, it's a very tough situation for many renters out there. The current literature in academia suggests that high rent burden is strongly associated with rising homelessness in many metro areas in the country. I think the increase in affordable housing should be definitely helpful for this situation. Also, offering additional resources for at risk New Yorkers and educating about their rights to legal counsel can also go a long way.
You know, the finding that only 48.2% of all working New Yorkers earned enough to afford rent is really a striking number. Because then you look at more than half are unable to afford rent. Um, going back to the president question, if you simply raise wages, are we getting closer to where we need to be?
I think the problem here is that affordability is very relative, depending on what
Ah,
occupation you have. Uh, Not that many rental inventory might be available for those individuals. We found out that typical workers in essential industries offering support for the New York City, including transportation, healthcare support, were only able to afford 10% of the rental inventory this summer. That is 48.2% of 4 million New York workforce. That's really a great financial burden on these people. Unless they spent more than 50% of their income, they were only able to afford 10% of the inventory.
just to conclude here before we have to let you go, Mr. Lee, is there a silver lining? Is the rental market, kind of rebalancing? Are we getting to a point where, what, just let the normal forces of the economy work and we'll get where we want to be? I mean, is there a hopeful sign here in this difficult problem?
One advice I have is don't let previous year's challenges let you down. I think there still is silver lining in this process. The process has been slow, but normalization is still happening. In November in 2022, about 22% of rental listings on StreetEasy offered discounts. That means landlords are resetting their expectations as the affordability issue really squeezes renters out there. As the market normalizes, renters may be able to find a better deal in 2023.
I think we're always hopeful that things will self correct. And I guess maybe that's what my final question was about. Kenny Lee, the economist for Street Easy, thank you so much for your input. We're thrilled to have you. We'll have you back. Let's hope the next conversation is this and say, wow, look what we did. But we do appreciate you and we appreciate Street Easy and we appreciate you joining us on Open this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, listen, to keep in touch with Street Easy, please go to their website at www.streeteasy.com or follow them on Instagram at Street Easy. So we're going to take a break. Stay tuned for more Open right after this.